started in just a minute. All right, we'll call to order the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners meeting here in Yerington on Friday, March 25th. Commissioner Hubbs, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Suzanne, could you please call the roll?
Chairman Drew.
Here.
Vice Chairman Wallace.
Here.
Commissioner Bliss.
Here.
Commissioner Huff.
Here.
Commissioner Johnston.
Commissioner Johnston will be absent today.
Commissioner McNish.
Here.
Commissioner Morai.
Here.
Commissioner Valentine.
Commissioner Valentine will also be absent today.
And Commissioner Young.
He should be here. Mark him present when he arrives, please. County Advisory Boards, if you could please stand and give us your name and the county you're representing, please.
Tom Casanelli, Humboldt County.
I'm Colonel Keith Douglas.
Paul Dixon Clark.
Martin Carter.
Joe Graham Perkins.
Lynn Butler, Middle County. Roy Lyle Lane.
All right. Thank you for that. We will move to agenda item 13, approval of the agenda for possible action. The commission will review the agenda and may take action to approve the agenda. The commission may remove items from the agenda, continue items for consideration, and take items out of order. Is there any discussion on the approval of the agenda? Director Wasley, any changes from your end? Okay. Seeing none, this is an action item. Is there any public comment or County Advisory Board comment on item 13, approval of the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Second that. I would like to motion to approve the agenda today as is.
I'll second that. I've got a motion from Commissioner Hubbs, a second from Commissioner Wallace to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll close agenda item number 13 and go to agenda item 14, member items, announcements, and correspondence. This is informational. Commissioners may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. The commission will review and may discuss correspondence sent or received by the commission since the last regular meeting and may provide copies for the exhibit file. Correspondence sent or received by the department may also be discussed. Before I ask for other commissioner items, I was contacted by a longtime friend and past NDOW employee, Elmer Bull. Because we're in Yerington and because of Mr. Bull's involvement with the Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area for all these years, he asked if we could make some special recognition for a individual whose efforts I think you'll hear about are pretty unprecedented. And so I was eager to jump at the opportunity since we're here in Yerington. So with that, I think, Elmer, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our special guest, and then I'll come around and say a few words along with Director Wasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, other members of the board. I really appreciate you making the time today. Director Wasley also for making some space in the agenda to recognize someone who has really made a substantial contribution to our efforts, our NDOW's efforts at the Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area over the years. As Chairman Drew mentioned, I retired from NDOW a few years ago. I spent a good portion of my career involved in the management of the Mason Valley Wildlife Area in one capacity or another. And during that time, I got to know an individual here in town, a sportsman by the name of Dennis Compston, who over the many years has contributed and continues to contribute large numbers of hours to the efforts out at the wildlife area. Dennis grew up here in Mason Valley, graduated from high school, attended UNR, and actually got a degree in wildlife biology. But however, when he got out of school, jobs were really tight. He ended up going to work for the Lyon County Assessor's Office, eventually became the Lyon County Assessor, and retired from there in 2002. In the late 1990s, Dennis contacted us out at the wildlife area and indicated that he'd really like to do some volunteer work at the wildlife area. So, you know, always being short-handed, we welcomed the opportunity to have somebody of his caliber working with us out there. So Dennis started out by doing things around the property. Those of you that were on a tour yesterday may have seen a number of great big signs out there that show where pond locations are, or directional signs and things like that. Dennis did most of those signs, and this was back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. He also helped us out with pheasant crow counts. He did turkey brood surveys, did quail translocation on the property, just a whole variety of things. But when he seemed to really find his calling when he got involved with the duck banding operation that has been going on at the wildlife area for quite a number of years. In the 1990s, NDOW entered into a very loose agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the Stillwater National Wildlife Refuge to do some duck banding over here, and the target was to band a couple hundred mallards at the wildlife area every year. Dennis got involved in that, and to say that he caught the duck banding fever would be a real understatement. He actually got to the point where he took that entire project on and basically carried it on his shoulders every summer, and it was an incredibly valuable contribution to us. The summer at the wildlife management area is always very busy, managing water, spraying weeds, planting and nurturing food plots, and all of those kinds of things. So to have somebody volunteer and come out and take on that project and actually lead it was incredibly valuable. And he really refined the duck banding and trapping operation out there by improving the way that we baited birds and improving the designs of the traps and all of those things that went into a successful banding operation. He continues to work with the folks and the staff out at the wildlife area, and I think over the years in talking to Dennis, and he's a meticulous record keeper on things that he's been involved with, and over the many years he's banded over 2,000 ducks out at the Mason Valley Wildlife Area. And in talking to Kim Toulouse, the volunteer coordinator for NDOW the other day, the volunteers, of course, are asked to submit the hours that they have contributed to the various NDOW projects that they're involved with. And Dennis, from 2003 up until the present, has donated in excess of 700 hours of volunteer time. And I can tell you, in the early days of his volunteerism, our reporting wasn't very good. We didn't really have a formalized process for submitting hours. So I can guarantee you that prior to 2003, he contributed many hours, and I think it'd be safe to say that he has logged well over 1,000 hours of volunteer time to the Mason Valley Wildlife Area, and it's been a tremendous contribution to the efforts out there. So one of the things when I was with NDOW that I always wanted to try to do was to get some recognition for Dennis. Didn't make it happen. When I heard that the commission meeting was going to be here, I thought this might be a great opportunity to recognize Dennis's substantial contributions. And I greatly appreciate, again, you making the time in the agenda. I know you've got a full agenda, and it's very busy, so we really appreciate the time. And I'd just like to say, you know, he's helped a number of managers at the property out here, but I can attest to how valuable his contributions were, and he definitely deserves recognition. With that, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Drew.
Well, Dennis, why don't you come on up? We'll make a presentation to you. But I knew I liked Dennis when he showed up wearing a Nevada Wolfpack polo. And I liked him even more when Elmer said he made the signs out at the WMA, because as a kid running around out here, you probably saved me from driving in a ditch or two. So I appreciate that. Obviously, the wildlife management area is a special place. I have the opportunity to really enjoy it over all these years, and it's neat to kind of put the face to the name and know just how much you contributed to that. And I can't really tell you in words how much I appreciate it, but there's a lot of people that do good things for wildlife in this state, and you're one of them. And so with that, I'm really proud to be able to present you with this simple token of appreciation. And it says, the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners recognizes Dennis Compton for substantial contribution of volunteer time to the mission of the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the betterment of the Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area, presented by myself and Director Wadsley. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to echo some of the sentiments that have been made and extend our gratitude and appreciation for what you've accomplished. And I don't know that a lot of people understand the importance of volunteer efforts to our overall mission, but it's critical, especially in the programs like Wildlife Management Area. So thank you for that. Also, I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of the banding program, and it's the banding and the return of those bands that inform the model that sets the federal framework for recommendations. And without that data, we would have difficulty making those recommendations. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I appreciate everyone indulging me for a few minutes in that. I think it was a few minutes well spent. Again, thank you, Elmer and Dennis. We really appreciate it. Additional commission member items. Correspondence. Everyone's quiet today, and not even all of us got up at 5 a.m. I had one additional item. Obviously, we've all received a lot of correspondence, and I think a lot of that will be discussed as we get into our agenda and action items. But one item that we can't cover, and the department actually brought this to my attention, and again, I think it's appropriate for this location to mention it, but one of the local residents here recently passed away. Mr. Joe Giomi was a pillar in this community. He was also, provided some information here from Maureen. He was a licensed agent since 1972, which for those of you who can't do the math as quickly as I can on short sleep is 44 years. He was the longest serving rural Nevada, and he was rural Nevada and primary agent here in the Yerington area and the longest serving active agent in the state. So pretty impressive. He sold the licenses out of the Ace Hardware here, and I just wanted to extend our best wishes to his family and recognize all the help and contribution he made in selling a lot of licenses. I know for those of us who buy a license every year, it's kind of an exciting time. We appreciate Mr. Giomi's contributions. With that, Director Wadsley, did you have correspondence or additional items?
No, Mr. Chairman, only those specific to later agenda items.
With that, we will close agenda item 14. And actually, before we do, and kind of on a more positive note, I did want to thank department staff. We had a really nice tour of the Mason Valley Fish Hatchery yesterday. Appreciation to the fish hatchery staff for staying after business hours to host that. Also to Wildlife Management Area and Habitat staff. We had a good opportunity to get out and see some of Mr. Compton's work, Elmer, some of the work that you did while you were down there. And, you know, a lot of times we look at these projects on paper and different grants and things, so it was really nice to be able to see the benefits of some of those programs on the ground. And then this morning, Mr. Espinoza rousted me out of bed at 5 a.m. and we had an opportunity to go observe a sage-grouse lek. So if this meeting comes off of the hinges at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, you'll know who to thank. So with that, I will close agenda item 14. We'll move to agenda item 15. This is County Advisory Board to manage wildlife member items. Again, informational. CAB members may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. County Advisory Boards, any items for us this morning? Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chairman and members, I just want to keep you informed of the work that we're doing in cooperation with Cooperative Extension and Department of Wildlife on urban wildlife. There is now a Facebook page called Western Nevada Urban Wildlife Conflicts on Facebook. And it's a collaboration of Carson City, but really importantly, Cooperative Extension and Department of Wildlife's new urban wildlife program. It's a great program. If you haven't gotten to meet Jessica Height yet, I highly recommend it. But for all of Western Nevada, we have a commonality of urban wildlife, from coyotes to mountain lions to mule deer. And I urge all of my Western Nevada counterparts to please go to that webpage, like it, and then if you have emerging ideas or items to put on it, we can do that through Cooperative Extension or through Jessica Height with the department. So it's a great thing, and thank you for your time.
Hey, Mr. Martin, excuse me.
Yes.
What if you don't have Facebook? Can you see it? I don't have that kind of stuff.
We'll mail you a copy.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Snail mail just for you.
Yeah.
Additional county advisory board action? Okay, seeing none, we'll close agenda item 15. We'll move to agenda item 16, license simplification, development of harvest management guidelines and America's wildlife value questions. Secretary Wosley and Game Division Administrator Brian Wakeling. This is informational. The department will provide the commission with a 3-part report on the ongoing processes for license simplification, development of new harvest management guidelines, and a report on the America's wildlife values questions. Director Wosley, I'll turn it over to you, and I think kind of A, B, and C will all more or less be rolled in together as we step through this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Really, what our goal objective here was to just expose these topics to you, to make you aware of some of what the department's doing in this arena. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity at a later date. You'll hear quite a bit more about these efforts, greater detail. But there's 3 things that are ongoing. I just wanted to take advantage of the meeting today to make you aware of these 3 things. First item is the American Wildlife Values Survey. The second is the license simplification effort. The third is harvest management guidelines. And so the way that I would think about these things is kind of in scale. The American Wildlife Values Survey is a national effort, very broad questions across all members of society. The license simplification effort is a Nevada-specific effort, looking at opportunities to bundle or combine, simplify that process, and the harvest guidelines, even more specific to the game division, looking at the consolidation of what we're currently doing that may exist in 4 or 5 different places, and try to consolidate that, examine it, see if that's the appropriate measure in those instances. So the American Wildlife Values, we are a participant, and Game Division Administrator Brian Wakeling and I will kind of tag team this and go through it. Brian, if you want to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Essentially, the Wildlife Values Survey is an effort at trying to get a sense of the kind of an inventory of the human dimensions perspectives within the state of Nevada. As Tony mentioned, this is a part of a broader effort. It's something that's being led by the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, despite the fact that it's a nationwide effort. All 50 states are being part of this effort. We have the opportunity to poll on some specific questions that are of interest to us here in Nevada, and so we also have the ability to go ahead and look at some specific, be able to cross-section the public, and so look at some regional differences, some contrast between some urban and rural perspectives, and get a sense of how some of these things are affecting things that we may be trying to implement, including the license simplification and some of the other things that we're involved in here within Nevada. This is a survey that has been conducted before. The last time it was conducted was in 2004. This will be the second time that this will go out. And so some of the questions are very similar. That provides us the opportunity to look at how the perspectives of Nevadans change over time. And it'll also provide us with some information about, when you look at human dimensions, the perspectives that people have, how things shift, concepts, and there's very extreme values, and most of the people within the room are not representative of those extremes. But there is a wide variety of a continuum from, utilitarian to mutualist. Utilitarian means, people tend to view wildlife as being available and for the use of humans. The other view, when you get to the extreme on mutualist, is that wildlife or animals in general have the same rights that humans would have. We are expecting this to receive a first report with the raw data by the end of June of this year. However, it'll be December of a year from now before the final report is finally pulled together with all the perspectives.
And I might add, this is again a national effort. There's a baseline level of participation, and then states have an option to pay an additional amount and include additional questions. There are a number of strata that we'll be able to examine the data by, including age, gender, income, education, and we'll be able to have an understanding of the perspectives as it relates to wildlife values. We also have some very specific questions as it relates to where people get their news, where they get their conservation news, what modalities. So rather than, in our education efforts, rather than casting a broad net and trying to blanket and hoping that something good happens, we can be a whole lot more efficient in targeting specific, either specific messages or specific media, and try to target that to specific audiences as we try to do outreach and education. Any questions on the Wildlife Values Survey?
I have one question, Dr. Wasley. How are you reaching out to obtain your survey data?
So this is being conducted by people who make their living doing these surveys. There are a number of individuals who do this as a regular basis in the natural resource arena. I believe some of the same individuals that conducted the original survey in 2004, and so there's a team, if you will, of human dimensions experts. It's being conducted out of Colorado State University and responsive management, who have a great deal of experience in this, and I trust that it is truly a random sample that'll be statistically defensible, and so it isn't our responsibility to make that selection, but certainly we have confidence in their ability to determine a randomly selected pool that'll provide a statistically defensible answer.
And I might add that this isn't targeting hunters, this isn't targeting anglers, this is the general public. And so they are not using any of our, they're using more of the resources that you would get through the census data, and a broad brush, trying to get a representative sample of humans within, and their dimensions within Nevada as a whole.
It's led to another question, I'm sorry. As the Commissioner of the General Public, I'm very interested in what the data might say. Will that be shared with the commissioners, or is it something internal, or will it be for the public as well?
As Administrator Wakeling indicated, we'll see the raw data presumably in June, and we'll see a full report in December of 2017. But there will be, I'm sure, several iterations of that, and that will be a publicly available report.
Additional question?
This is just a little background information, and again, we're going to try to keep it a pretty high level and truly just an overview. And as we look at this graph, the relevance of this graph, outdoor recreation is relevant. You see three circles on there. The outline of the state of Nevada represents the entire population of Nevada. These are proportional. The large circle in the middle represents the proportion of that population that identify themselves as wildlife viewers, individuals that drive more than 10 miles from their home for the sole purpose of viewing wildlife. The next smallest circle represents angling public, and the smaller circle represents the hunting. The overlap is also a proportional representation of those interests. I think what I might do in the interest of time is, and visibility, since it's tough for folks in the room to see this, is skip through this, and certainly if there's more questions, and as this progresses, any time that the commission or individual commissioners desire to have an update or engage on that National Wildlife Value Survey, we're more than happy to come back and provide an update as to where this process is and share any of those preliminary findings and certainly the summary of the full report. The second item that we wanted to talk about is the license simplification. And there are a number of reasons why this effort is being undertaken. But as the name suggests, it's intended to simplify options, the process. The complexity is considered to be a barrier to participation. There are a number of efforts nationally to look at the hunting and angling as an activity. What are the barriers to participation? A lot of the barriers are complexity related. One of those issues of complexity is in the license arena. The customer service is hindered by that complexity, and the compliance with regulation can be improved the more simple it is, people understand it. So we have a consultant, Chase & Chase Consulting. It's a three-step process, comparing what we have around us in adjacent states, qualitative analysis, and ultimately a quantitative, breaking down the actual numbers. This is early in the process. We're simply at the research, if you will, portion where we're kind of at in the comparative stages. The comparative states were chosen three main criteria. One is that they border Nevada, so it's a good comparison. Second, population densities. As we look at all of our adjacent states, we've got California, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Oregon. We compared with all those states, and then due to demographic similarities, age distribution, household size, urbanization, we also added Colorado to that comparison. This reflects the comparative states, the comparison states. And again, Colorado is the only state that's in the comparison that isn't a border state. Again, that's due to the similarities in demographics. There's been one change in the license structure in Nevada in the last 20 years. And as we look at what is occurring around us, we can see that every other state, Oregon 2016, California 2016, Arizona 2014, Utah 2014, and then both Idaho and Colorado have had changes to their non-resident license structure. Idaho 2009, Colorado in 2016. We look at the number of licenses, and again, I apologize, I know this is difficult to read, but the message is clear that as we look at the number of licenses in Nevada, hunting licenses, fishing licenses, combination licenses, stamps, and tags, and we compare that to a state who has undergone the simplification process within the last 2 years, those are kind of two extremes. The qualitative aspect, I'll ask Mr. Wakeling to address.
The comparative, I'll start with the comparative first. You know, the comparative was the first effort that Chase and Chase conducted. That's been completed. Director Wosley walked you through a lot of the information that we've identified through some of the comparative stuff. Right now, we're in fact, last night was the tail end of the qualitative analysis. What that involves is engaging in focus groups. Focus groups, again, this was a random sample. In this case, the random sample was to our licensed purchasers. And they could be anglers, they could be hunters, they could be combo, but the people we're primarily interested in with the license simplification are the people that buy those licenses. And so we're looking to those individuals to help identify what do you like, what's too complicated, how can we make things better, how can we provide you with better service. And so we had 6 different focus groups. The last one was completed last night in Fallon. In these focus groups, we tried to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 individuals. We tried to have some department personnel present at the meetings when they came in, and then the department personnel were dismissed, and Chase and Chase Consulting conducted the focus groups. We've had 6 of those. The first 3 were held March 8th through the 10th, Vegas, Henderson, and Reno. And then the last 3 nights, starting out in Elko, Ely, and then, as I mentioned, Fallon last night. The whole objective there is to get open-ended questions, open-ended feedback. What do you like? You know, and so it's very qualitative. It isn't a quantitative. It's not a survey that's going to give you statistical analysis. But what it does do is identify the breadth of the issues and identifies a lot of the issues that the public talks to us about. You know, the TAC committee presented several of those yesterday that come up quite frequently in these focus groups, and one of those being the waiting period. That is probably one of the more frequent things that came up.
And just to underscore again that it's idea generation. It's engaging certain members of our public to share their thoughts and ideas in truly an idea generation exercise. The quantitative, that will follow, that'll be I won't say the final step, but the next step, and that's where we'll begin to look at some of the specifics and look at the potential ramifications, whether it be in terms of purchases or revenue, and again, there's going to be primarily a phone survey here, and that will occur in April. There will be an effort, probably sooner than later, to generate a stakeholder group in this effort. Certainly, there are a lot of challenges with public perceptions. There would be a need for some changes in statutes if there are some efforts to simplify. Presently, through all the stamps, through all the tags, through all the licenses, many of those are defined in statute. So if we have an effort to truly simplify things, a lot of changes would need to occur in statute. So without broad understanding and broad support of some of these potential changes, their likelihood for success is decreased. So by having a stakeholder group that not only is responsible